let's talk spices and herbs. There's a myth that spices and herbs were often used to mask the smell of rotting flesh. And while that sounds really nice, when we look into the archaeological record, what we see is that people were using herbs and spices in burial rituals, or they were using spices and herbs to make things taste better. Now, if you think about some of the foods that we love, imagine pasta or potatoes or all of those starchy staples without any kind of flavoring. They were pretty bland. They don't really have much going for them. So I think if we just come to terms with the idea that humans like to do things that feel good, they like to eat things that taste good, then I think it helps us to understand a little bit more about why people would have started using herbs and spices in their culinary foods. And then as we go back and we start to do some research, what we discover is sometimes those herbs and spices have a medicinal aspect to them. They can be used in a medicinal way. Now, when you think back about the first humans, they weren't directly thinking about, like, will this plant cure my illness? Will the following things happen if I eat this plant? They were acting very intuitively. They were observing and collecting a lot of information in their environment and experimenting and trying things. And in that experimentation, there would have been some failures. And the failures would have led to illness and even death for some individuals. So what we know today about the plants that we use for flavorings, these really aromatic and flavorful plant products, comes about as a result of a lot of experimentation. So let's thank those people of the past who figured this all out, because we get to take advantage of it. Now, in botany, we don't make a distinction between a spice and an herb. We do talk about different categories and classifications of plants, but this classification of herb or spice is really more of a culinary distinction. So an herb is going to be anything that is grown in the Mediterranean type region. And when we think about the Mediterranean region, we need to think of well-draining soils. We need to think of fairly consistent temperatures, not really extreme highs and really low lows. So the plants can tolerate some cold temperatures, and a lot of them want some cooler temperatures, but they don't want a deep freeze like we would see in, say, northern Wisconsin or Minnesota. So they want the milder winters, and they also want those milder summers as well. So over here, I have a great big pot of herbs from the mint family. And this is rosemary, and we've got some thyme and oregano, and all of these are excellent examples of the mint family. Oh man, and just touching those leaves, I immediately started to release the volatile organic compounds. Those essential oils are now on my fingers, and I can just smell that rosemary and thyme and oregano. It is so refreshing. There are some common characteristics of the mint family. Most members of the mint family have simple leaves. The leaves are often in an alternate arrangement on the stem. They have net venation in their leaves. And the other thing that we notice is that the stems tend to be square. So with those square stems, it often indicates that we have a mint family member. Now, we do have an unusual member of the mint family, and that's rosemary. And with rosemary, we've got the thinner leaves, and we've got a more whorled leaf arrangement on the stem. So rosemary is sort of our outlier when we're looking at the mint family. Another family of herbs that a lot of us love is the parsley family. And so here we've got some of that very typical curly leaf parsley that we're familiar with. This is the flat leaf parsley. And what I allowed it to do this summer was I allowed it to go to seed. And the reason why I wanted to do that is so that I could let the seed fall in my garden, and then next year it will bring about new plants, because our parsley seeds need a little bit of winter. They need that cold in order for the seeds to regrow again. So by letting it sit in my garden, it gets its cold treatment, and I should have parsley plants next year and not have to buy it from the greenhouse. Our parsley family, we're generally going to be using the leaves and the seeds from the members in this family. And one thing that we're going to notice is we've got that compound umbel flower structure. This is going to help us to identify that we have a member of the parsley family. And when we get into poisonous and allergy plants, we have to be careful because some of those poisonous and allergy-causing plants in the parsley family look exactly like the delicious stuff that I'm holding here. So keep that in mind when we get to the next chapter. Another family of herbs that we love to use is the mustard family. And I know it's weird to think about cauliflower and broccoli and all of those brassica plants that we've already studied this semester coming from the mustard family. Because most of the time when we think about mustard, we think about the seed being ground up and then mixed with some vinegar and mixed with some other flavorings to make the mustard that we use as a condiment. But it's a very diverse family, the mustard family. Finally, our final family of herbs will be the lily family. And it's so weird to think about garlic and onions as being members of the lily family, but they are. So the alliums, the lily family, have a lot of shared characteristics. When we eat members of the lily family, we're often eating the part of the plant that has a bulb. And remember, bulbs are just modified leaves. And in lab, we're going to experiment with garlic because garlic has a specific molecule that allows it to be able to stop bacteria from growing. So this is nice because we have a member of the lily family that can cross over into a medicinal category for our plants. Now, whether you're using herbs or you're using spices, a couple of tools are super important. This is a microplane. So if you have a chunky piece of a plant and you want to grate it down to a fine powder, these things are amazing. You must get one. I don't know if you have one, but get one immediately so that you can grind your different part plants up really, really fine. So we use microplanes and the spice grinder. Spice grinders are great when you're trying to get a seed and pulverize it into a fine powder. This way you don't have to use the mortar and pestle. You can use a mortar and pestle. It feels a lot more stress relieving because you get to grind and grind and grind and grind and grind and grind and grind. But I'm lazy and I like the spice grinder. So for the most part with our herbs, we're going to be using leaves and stems and occasionally some seeds. When it comes to our spices are generally plants that grow in tropical regions. They cannot tolerate cold. And when it comes to our spices, we're going to use all different kinds of parts of the plant. Here we have nutmeg. And nutmeg comes from a plant where we can actually get two spices. Here is the seed, and that seed is what we use to make the nutmeg powder. Man, I love it. This is primarily why I have a microplane, because as I grate that powder, I get that super intense smell. All chefs and culinary people will tell you, quit buying pre-ground nutmeg. Grind your own. It's a whole different animal. It's way better. It has a much better flavor than the stuff that's pre-ground in the store. So with nutmeg, the seed gives us true nutmeg. And surrounding the seed is going to be those lacy arrows. And those lacy arrows can be ground up and be used to make the spice mace. Now here I have several different types of paprika. Paprika comes from peppers. And what I love about this is typically the stuff that we get in the store is just boring old red paprika. There's this place called Penzeys. And when you go to Penzeys, they have the absolute best spices anywhere. So here we have the half sharp paprika, This is the Hungarian sweet. This is the smoked style paprika. These all have very distinct flavors. They get used in different ways when you're cooking and making things. I really never knew how good things could taste until I started experimenting with all of the different spices that are out there. So same goes for cinnamon. The stuff in the store is just, it's okay, but if you can get to Penzeys, here we've got the Ceylon cinnamon, and then we have the Vietnamese cinnamon. And I know this is kind of cruel to do, but I'm going to open these up and smell them. They have different scents because they have very different flavors. The Vietnamese, I find, is very, it's like a warm blanket, but there's a little bit of a bite there, so it's a little bit more aggressive of a cinnamon flavor. Ceylon cinnamon, oh man. Oh, that is smooth. That's a lighter cinnamon. So depending on what I'm baking and what I'm using it for, I'm going to use different types of cinnamon to get those different kinds of flavors. So with cinnamon, we are using the bark, the outer part of that shrubby tree that grows in the understory of tropical forests. With vanilla, we're going to be primarily using the flavors extracted from the fruit. And if you're really patient, if you're really dedicated, you will, oh wow, that's great. You will use the seeds from inside of the fruit. So I'm not able to pull the fruit out of here, but there are 2 long little fruits inside of this vanilla container. And if I wanted to, I could scrape out the seeds and use those. But most of the time, by soaking the fruit, which includes the seeds, in alcohol, we can extract that very characteristic vanilla volatile organic compound. Now, as we all know, there is really no replacement for true vanilla. We do make imitation vanilla, but in the lecture slides I point out that imitation vanilla is made from the byproducts of making crude oil into gasoline and diesel fuel. It does contain benzene groups. Those are not good for you. So please, please, please don't use it. I know that spices are expensive, especially if you're going to move to a higher quality spice and start getting your stuff from a place like Penzeys. But something like this could last you for like 6 months, even if you're baking really regularly. Most of our recipes only call for like a teaspoon or a half teaspoon. So you know that the quantity will last. And I can't encourage you enough to get high quality spices. It makes a difference in what you are eating. And life's too short to eat crappy food. So if we take a note from our past humans, people who figured out all of these things that we could eat and use as flavorings, if we take a note from them to enjoy life, to make things taste better, hopefully you will enjoy the spices and herbs and experiment with them. See what you can make and how differently things can be flavored with all the different spices and herbs. If you have any questions, please email me. I would say when we're learning about spices and herbs, make sure you memorize that general location where the plant is found, the part of the plant that we eat and we use in cooking.